What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we are talking about Jett Harrison continuing the Ohio State legacy that his brother Marv left, committing to Ohio State last week. Now, if you guys know me, you guys know I don't like to get videos out for you guys late. I like to get them out the day of or the day after. This one I kind of let simmer because we have been doing a lot of lives. As you guys know, the content I have been getting out to you guys on my podcast platforms have been live viewer call-ins. So if you guys want to join my lives on TikTok and get on my podcast as well, share your opinion, you guys can do that. But today we finally have a video of just me going over a topic. Like I said, one of the biggest commitments of the year, Jett Harrison to Ohio State. Now I want to talk about why I believe this is so big for Ohio State. And even though this may be a layup to some people, I still think this really helps a lot of receivers coming into Ohio State in the future. Why I believe it is so big that Jett Harrison commit to Ohio State, even though, like I said, it may be a layup to some. They are wide receiver U. His brother did go there. I think it is big because it's still showing that Ohio State has the ability to retain these five-star receivers after a huge piece of the puzzle in Brian Hartline left to UCF. We saw Chris Henry Jr. still stay with Ohio State, even though he was kind of debating it towards last year when Brian Hartline was going. We see Jett Harrison have a strong relationship with Cortez Hacken, the new wide receiver coach for Ohio State. Credit to Cortez for really continuing with the momentum after Brian Hartline left. And Jett Harrison commits to Ohio State. I really don't think there was no other way for Jett Harrison to go. Now, he had offers from everywhere. He had offers from Oregon, USC, Notre Dame, Miami, Penn State, Tennessee, Syracuse. Now, if somebody may have offered him a way bigger NIL bag, that could have been possible. But like we said, his brother left the legacy there for him to continue. And at the end of the day, Ohio State is still looked at as wide receiver U. The one thing I do have to say about both the Harrison brothers going to St. Joseph's Prep is that Penn State really botched this. Now, Penn State botched this in the beginning, not getting Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, it's way harder to get Jett Harrison once Marvin Harrison Jr. goes there. But St. Joseph Prep is huge in the state of Pennsylvania with their linkage to Penn State. The fact that they didn't get both of these guys, arguably the two top players to come out of there, they really botched this with their linkage to Penn State. Going over Marvin Harrison Jr., I feel like Jett Harrison Jr. is just a cutout image copy to Marvin. I feel like both of them aren't the biggest receivers. They aren't the fastest receivers, but they have elite body control, elite technician, and elite route running. That's where I believe they separate themselves and why Jett Harrison Jr. is the most productive underclassman right now in the country. When we look at Jett Harrison, he had 10 touchdowns his first year, his freshman year. In his sophomore year, this last season, he had 15 touchdowns at St. Joseph's Prep. That's more than Marvin Harrison Jr. ever had there. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 37 touchdowns total in 3 years. It's going to be interesting to see if Jett Harrison breaks this, because he already has 25 touchdowns there. He's going to break it in 4 years, but you got to keep in mind Marvin Harrison Jr. only played there 3 years. So I want to see if Jett Harrison could break that in its next year. He's going to absolutely blow away all of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s records. And you really see Jett Harrison take pretty much the same exact path as Marvin. He goes to St. Joseph's Prep, one of the most elite prep schools. He already has 2 state championships under his belt. Marvin Harrison Jr. won the state championship there all 3 times. And then he's going to go to Ohio State. So it's a smooth transition. Now, when you look at Jett Harrison as an underclassman right now, he's 6'1", 175 pounds. Marvin Harrison Jr. tops out now in the pros at 6'3", 220. So Jett Harrison is still kind of ways off in size of Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, he could gain an inch or two for sure in the next 2 years, but he's definitely going to have to put on some weight and grow into his man body. Like I said, Marvin Harrison Jr. is 220. He's like 40 pounds off right now. Jett is of him. So that's going to be interesting as well. Now, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has really good size for a college and NFL player. I don't think he has elite size. And I don't think Jett will have elite size either. And I don't think either of them have elite speed, but they do have elite acceleration. Like I said, with the Harrison brothers, it really comes down to technique. Their body control against DBs is phenomenal. Their route running against all three levels is phenomenal. So I expect Jett Harrison to be the same type of player as Marv. Now, the offense that I see Jett Harrison going into as his first year as a true freshman, because that's really all I could predict right now, he's going to most likely be across Chris Henry Jr. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with NIL and transfer portal, but I think he's going to be across from Chris Henry Jr. And I predict him to have Tavion St. Clair throwing him the football in his first year. Now, I don't know if Tavion St. Clair, after sitting behind Julian Sayin for 2 years as this super prospect, is going to play 1 or 2 years at Ohio State. I could see Tavion St. Clair doing something similar to Ty Simpson, maybe just tearing it up for 1 year and going to the pros if his stock is there. Or he may play 2 years of college football, which I think everybody right now pretty much should. But I believe that's the offense he's going to go into. I believe he's going to be across from Chris Henry Jr. I just Guan Guilford's going to be in that offense, probably Legend Bay, and you're going to have Jett Harrison on the opposite side. So I think he's going to go into an offense where he's not going to have to be the number one guy right away, which I think is going to be perfect. And if you remember when Marvin Harrison Jr. came into his offense with C.J. Stroud and Jack Smith-Njigba, he also wasn't the number one guy when he took off as well. So I think that's the right situation to go into for sure. I think, like I said, this is massive for Ohio State because it shows without Brian Hartline that they are still wide receiver U. With Chris Henry Jr., Jaquan Guilford, and now Marvin Harrison, and now Jett Harrison, they show that without Brian Hartline, they could still do it. Now, I think Brian Hartline is still instrumental to the puzzle. I talked about how a lot of people don't look at the receivers coach, the offensive coordinator, when we look at developing his talent. They just think automatically a lot of these 5 stars are destined for greatness, which isn't necessarily true. The fact that Brian Hartline pretty much hit on every receiver they recruited, and the biggest thing for me with Brian Hartline is he got all these guys in the NFL being there at the same time or there years apart. So he knew when to really give each receiver their shine. I think that is so instrumental and can't go overlooked. He didn't have any of his receivers really transfer out. I mean, we saw Quincy Porter and Miles Graham transfer out, but that was after he already left. Like, we saw all these receivers pretty much stay at Ohio State and get in the first round. When we look at Chris Olave, when we look at Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jack Smith-Njigba, all these receivers pretty much within a year of each other were able to go in the first round, and some of them playing with each other. I think that's something you can't overlook with Brian Hartline, and that's going to be a challenge now for Ohio State with Hampton. And when you look at Ryan Day, that's going to be the challenge. You got all these receivers now in your room. Can you keep them there, and can you get all of them in the first round while they're kind of intersecting each other? That's going to be the biggest question, but I believe with Jett Harrison, this was an easier recruitment for Ohio State because I think Marvin was definitely in his ear, and obviously we know Ohio State is the prime program for receivers, but that's my biggest question now. There is no doubt with Chris Henry Jr. and with Jett Harrison that you could still get these guys, but are you going to be able to retain these guys with all the talent in this room? And are you going to be able to get all of them where they're supposed to be in the first round without Brian Hartline? We'll see. And I think Brian Hartline is going to do phenomenal things at USF, and I think he's going to turn that program eventually one day into getting into the college football playoffs. That's how high I am on him. Guys, don't take these offensive coordinators, these receiving coach, QB coaches for granted. Like, Brian Hartline did a phenomenal job there, and they're going to have to adjust Ohio State a little bit. But, again, we're not going to see Jett Harrison at Ohio State for pretty much 2 years. It's going to be 2028, his first season as a true freshman. Like I said, I kind of previewed that he's not going to have to be the number one guy right away. And he's going to have, at that point, if Tavion St. Clair is still there, I believe an elite quarterback throwing him the football. It's just crazy how similar to me he is to Marvin Harrison Jr. Not only are they taking the same pathway, but like they're pretty much the same size at this time. They're the same, in my opinion, where they're not 6'5" guys. They don't have elite speed, but technique-wise, coming from their father, they kill it. route running, body control. Like I said, they are top of the line. And it's crazy in his sophomore season at St. Joseph Prep that he had more touchdowns than Marvin Harrison Jr. ever did there. So is he going to be better than Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State? Will he be able to hold a candle to him? We'll see. We'll 100% see. But one of the biggest recruitments of the year, obviously based on his brother, his father, the school he goes to, everything considered. That wraps up this little episode of Sloppy Saturday, going over Jett Harrison Jr. to Ohio State. Drop down below. Do you think Brian Hartline leaving Ohio State is going to impact them heavily? Or do you think they're going to be right on track like they've been with Chris Henry Jr. and Jett Harrison? Like I said, keep staying tuned with the lives with me. If you guys want to come in, debate me on the lives, or talk to me on TikTok, that's been going heavy. And then next month, we are going over everything. Rankings of schools, rankings of positions, conference previews, and who knows, we may have some new guests on here as well, as I am working on a couple of things. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and we are out.